All right, everyone, welcome back to our 10:30 a.m. session. This session is dedicated to Introduction to Foundation Maps, and I have two amazing, very dynamic colleagues who are actually going to be role-playing. So, like I said earlier, in addition to us using this as an educational learning opportunity, we're also critiquing their acting skills. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Amanda Dillon, Manager of Strategic Philanthropy, as well as Nina Sporer, who is already in her character, Manager of Strategic Philanthropy. So please help me give them a warm welcome. Thank you.
I work at Grand Rapids Public Library. We've been a Fin partner for many years, and boy, has it been a great experience. Our library visitors sure are thankful to have access to all the resources and databases through our partnership with Foundation Center. They say that, oh, hold on one second. Here comes a visitor now. Hi there, welcome. How can I help you?
Hi, my name is Nancy, and I work at the World Wildlife Fund. We're a large nonprofit, and our board and leadership just created a new strategic plan. We think that sound public policy is critical to the success of long-term conservation efforts across the globe. And so our organization wants to secure transformative change at all levels of government in the U.S. and overseas to better protect wildlife and their habitats. With the emphasis on advocacy and policy, I'm here to find out how we can find more supporters for this kind of work.
No problem. I think, the work that you're doing is incredible, and I have a tool that might just be able to help you out. So give me 1 second while I pull it up on the screen here. So have you ever heard of Foundation Maps?
Yes, I've heard of it, but I don't know much about it.
Okay, well, Foundation Maps is a data visualization tool, and it maps basically who is funding what and where around the world, as you can see. You can use the tool to visualize data by maps, by lists. You can look at data through charts, through something we call pathways, and through another feature called Constellations. And you can actually also save your searches. You can also sort all of the information by recipients, foundations, and area served.
Oh, that's interesting, but can you search by subjects and other types of filters?
Yes, actually you can. So you can search by subject area here, and these 4 boxes represent aggregate totals. So as you can see in our database, we have more than 3.5 million grants totaling more than $250 billion. There's actually more than 37,000 funders in here, and almost 400,000 recipients, so we have a lot of data.
Wow, are those numbers representative of all the data in Foundation Maps, and how many years of data is that?
So yes, this represents data from 2006 to present. And so given your type of organization, let's explore the subject categories so we can find something that characterizes where World Wildlife Fund would fall under. So I'm going to browse subjects here, and I'm guessing it's under environment. So I'm going to click environment, and then maybe it's under diversity. Okay, so probably wildlife biodiversity is what we're looking for. And so let me just go to the map. And so it looks like we have almost $2 billion worth in grant records going to wildlife biodiversity.
Wow, that's a lot more than I expected. But I'm actually only interested in advocacy.
Okay, no problem. So we can actually filter our results further. And so under more filters, you find even more ways to slice the data. And so I'm guessing that something like advocacy would be under support strategy. So let's scroll down, and it looks like, here we go, policy, advocacy, and systems reform. So I'm just going to click that. And so as you can see, the data's changed, and only about $65 million out of the $2 billion are going to support advocacy work. And so then we can also look at the top list of funders using this tool. So here are the top funders that are giving to wildlife diversity for policy advocacy and systems reform work. Does this look familiar to you?
Yes, the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation and Pew and Packard I'm familiar with, but actually Arcus Foundation and the Keith Campbell Foundation I haven't heard of before. So that's actually really interesting. So it's helpful to see this list, but I'm curious to find out whether these funders might actually give to organizations like mine.
Well, that's a great question, and I understand that concern. So if we click over here onto the Recipients tab, you can actually see that your organization comes up in the 5th place as receiving the most funding for this subject area. And so I want to show you a tool that we call Pathways around here. So you can get to it clicking this little icon. It looks like a little 3-pronged thing. And what you're looking at here is funding pathways. So you can see that the World Wildlife Fund shows up here on the left, and then to the right are its top 3 funders. So do these top 3 funders look familiar or correct to you?
Yes, they do. They do. But what's to the right of them?
So to the right of these are these foundations' other top recipients. And then to the right of those are these top recipients' other funders. So these are foundations who are not funding World Wildlife Fund for this kind of work.
So essentially, if I have this right, I'm looking at a prospect list. Is that right?
Exactly. So these funding organizations that aren't giving to you might be giving to you because they're giving to organizations like your own.
That's great. That's really terrific. My development manager is going to love this.
Glad to hear it. I do want to show you another powerful feature that can help you in your prospecting. So let's go back to the list view over here. And we can actually take a look at all of the foundations a little bit more closely. So in this view, you get a sense of their profile. So I'm going to click on one of the ones you said you weren't familiar with, the Keith Campbell Foundation. So as you can see from this view, we get a sense of their mission, if there's background information, grant-making programs. You can also look at their specific grants. But one of the most, I think, innovative tools of Foundation Maps is this subject view. So it shows across all of these different subjects where they're making most of their grant making.
And where do these subjects, these categories come from?
So these categories are part of Foundation Center's taxonomy. We actually just re-released our taxonomy, and it's called now the Philanthropy Classification System. And it's more robust and up-to-date than what we had before. So the new taxonomy actually includes codes like stem cell therapy, and in some instances will go much deeper and much more specific within other categories like education, environment, and health. So I'm actually going to click on this so you can actually see some of the subcategorization under environment. And then again, click into biodiversity because that's where we found World Wildlife Fund. And so you can see the grants data getting more and more specific with this tool.
Oh, that's really interesting. So do those numbers represent the total funding? And then from here, can I pull up more information on the recipient organizations for these grants?
Yeah, so actually this is a total number of grants awarded, and you can change that by clicking up here where it says summary. So it'll go from count to amount. So now it shows the information in dollars.
Wow, that looks like 8.9 million for wildlife biodiversity. That's really interesting.
Right, whereas less than 400,000 is going to forest preservation. And then if you wanted to see a list of what grants are being made, you could click on this little grants list here, and I'll just show you. It pops up a list of grants, so showing foundation name. Of course, we're looking at the Campbell Foundation, so these are all of their grants, and then their recipients.
Okay, great. And is this showing me all the years of funding, or is it for a specific year that Keith Campbell made these grants?
So this is for all years of funding, and as you can see, this shows right here all. But we built in this really cool animation feature so that you can actually see funding over each year. So I'm going to click play in the middle and just watch the numbers here change as the funding for these categories changes. And so sometimes this can be more dynamic the more categories you have. In this case, we only have 3, so it's not as dynamic. But for some foundations, you'll see where they're starting to fund a new area that they hadn't before, or where they're leaving funding from a particular area. So it can be interesting as you explore it more.
Wow, what an impressive tool. So much useful information. Thank you so much. I'm going to explore this more at one of the computers back there and take this knowledge back to my board.
Great. Thanks so much for stopping in. So another satisfied visitor. Man, it's so easy when we have such beautiful and powerful tools to help them with. So anyway, as I was saying, traditionally we've helped... Oh, hello there.
Hi there.
How can I help you?
I'm Felicia, and I'm a funder.
Hi, Felicia. I'm Frances. I'm the director of the Grand Rapids Public Library.
Nice to meet you, Frances. I'm here today because we're in the throes of strategic planning. Gosh, what a process. And we've traditionally been concerned with health issues, but in response to the growing crisis in Europe and the Middle East, we're looking to get more involved in supporting human rights, specifically immigration. It's been very hard on our board to sit around and not know what kind of support is going to these important and timely issues. We literally have no idea if other funders are supporting this cause. It would be great to find out who's doing what and where, and find organizations working on these issues that we can support. Overall, we need a better understanding of the funding landscape and who the key players are.
Yeah, I completely understand that. So actually, I was just showing the previous visitor that was in here this great tool called Foundation Maps. So why don't I start there with you? I'm just going to get us back to start and clear all of our filters. So this tool is actually built for specifically scanning the landscape and doing a lot of the work that you were exactly inquiring about. It's a really great tool for figuring out who all the key stakeholders are and who potential partners for collaboration are. So let's start by taking a look at where immigration funding is going. So I'm going to switch the view. So right now we're looking at recipients on the map, but we can switch it to area served on the map.
Oh, what happened to the bubbles? And what does that mean? You just switched to area served?
Yeah, so area served means that we're showing grants by where they are serving. So basically, if an organization were located in Washington, D.C., but we're actually working in Rwanda, instead of the grant showing up in Washington, D.C., you would see the grant showing up in Rwanda. So this is a much more accurate picture of where funding is going.
Oh, that's really nifty. So the darker the color, the more funding to that area.
Bingo. So this actually functions like a heat map. So let's narrow down our search for what you were interested in, which is immigrant populations. And the way that you would find populations is under more filters. So as you can see, it's right here, population served, and I'm going to scroll down. So I think from the choices, immigration might be under social and economic status. And here we go, immigrants and migrants. Okay, so let's get back to the map.
Okay, interesting. So it looks like, is that United States, Mexico, the UK, Netherlands, and I think that's Ethiopia. I don't have my glasses on, but all right, so it looks like they're getting the most funding for immigration, for immigrant populations.
According
That's
to our,
good to know.
Yeah, according to our grants record, that's exactly correct.
Interesting. Well, we don't really know what region we want to focus on just yet, so we want to actually find people to talk to first. We're not a large grant maker, so it probably makes sense for us to talk to organizations that are making smaller grants.
Okay, no problem. So we can continue to filter our criteria, and we can actually look for just grants that are under 10,000. So that might represent a foundation that's making smaller grant making. So again, under more filters, you can see here grant amount. So I'm going to click on less than 10K. And let's get a list of who those funders are by clicking lists. So you can see this is a list of more mid-sized foundations. So New York Community Trust, Wells Fargo Foundation, New York Foundation. These are foundations that are making smaller grants, the ones under $10,000. So these might be the ones who you want to connect with.
I see. Is there contact information for any of these?
We do have contact information for some of them. So you would find that by clicking on their profile. And so as you can see, we have their address, their telephone number, their email, website. So in some cases, this is an actual person's email, but in some cases, it's more like an info@email, which is still helpful.
That's great. That is really helpful, actually. And it's great to see the map and the lists. But since we're so new to this field, I wish there was a way to get a sense of all the players in this network and how they're all related. I almost want to see a visual that connects the dots for me, but I don't know what that would look like, frankly. Since we're primarily a health funder, it would be interesting to see health funding with an immigrant population lens.
Okay, I think we actually can do that with this tool. It's that powerful. So let me add health, like you said, to the subject area so we can refine from this viewpoint. And then, as we mentioned at the beginning, there's this tool called Constellations. So I'm going to click it and prepare to be wowed.
Wow.
Wow.
That's amazing. So glad something like this exists. Now, what do all those moving bubbles mean, and why are there names for some of them but not all of them?
Yeah, so let me zoom in so you can see the details a little bit more. So essentially the red bubbles represent recipients, grant recipients, and the blue bubbles represent foundations. And so in this view, you can see where foundations are in relationship to one another and where recipients are, and the flows of funding and all of the connections. The size of the bubble corresponds with either the grants being made by the foundation or the grants being received by the recipient. And the names that are automatically showing up on screen represent the 10 top most central organizations. So that means they have the most links and networks with every other organization in this view.
I see. That makes sense. And so where would San Diego Foundation be in this universe? I know they do some funding for this.
That's a good question. And since I don't see them right here, we can search them by their name. So in this little area right here, I'm going to type in San Diego. And there's autocomplete, which is very easy and useful. So I'm going to click San Diego Foundation. And so it looks like they're right here in the network.
Oh, great. That's really helpful. Now, is there a way to see all the organizations' names, or do I have to click on every bubble?
So you can actually, instead of having to click, you can hover on them. So if you don't want to click, you can hover and say, okay, that's TD Charitable. Who are they giving to? They're giving to New Hampshire Minority Health.
Oh, good, because I hate clicking.
Well, lucky for you, we've thought of that. So then we have this tabular feature, which pulls up a list of all of the organizations represented, and it actually sorts them by their centrality. So you can use this to click around and figure out who's where exactly on this network map.
That's great. And how do I find out how much funding a specific organization has received or who their funders are?
So let's go back to this view, and you can click on, for example, Vista Community Clinic. If you click on the bubble, then you get the option to pull up a list of their funders, foundations, or a list of the grants that are going to them. So that's how you would get it.
Oh, terrific. That's great. Thanks, Francis. This is really going to help us with fact-finding and information gathering as we embark on our strategic change.
Good luck with that. Happy to help.
Thank you.
Take care. So, man, there's so many customers, like I said, who come in here and are so satisfied with learning how to use this tool better. So as I was saying, FDO is our go-to resource that most people know about and that they come to the library to use. That said, Foundation Maps is getting more and more attention, especially because they can use the visuals in presentations, and sometimes people are more of a visual learner. So I think that it helps in that aspect.
Hi there. Do you work here?
Yes, hello there. I'm the director of the library.
I'm Reggie, and I would love your help. I'm the manager of a regional association of foundations. I'm new to this role, and my job involves increasing membership. I've heard that Foundation Center is the place to go to learn about who is working in philanthropy in my area, and I'm hoping you can help me identify some potential new members.
I can certainly help you with that. So we have this resource that's pulled up on screen that I've been showing people, and I think that it actually can answer some of the questions that you have. So I'm going to go back to the map and clear all of my selections because I was just helping someone that was interested in immigration. Starting with the map, we can search by foundation location. So the red bubbles are representing recipients, but if we click on foundations, the blue bubbles are representing where foundations are located. So what are you interested in learning about?
Well, we operate in the South, but I'm actually interested in finding new members in Texas, since that's underrepresented within our membership.
Okay, I'm going to type in Texas into the location, click it. Okay, so this is how you would pull up where foundations are located in a particular area or a state. And if you went to the list, you could actually see a list of all of those foundations. But this map can be useful because you can see areas of concentration. So that could be helpful if you want to host events, figure out where there's a lot of people already, or if you're trying to figure out where to broaden your member base. So it looks like, according to the map, there's a good concentration around Dallas. So in Dallas County, over 600 funders. In Houston, Harris County, almost 500 funders. Around here over Austin, there are almost 200 funders. But there's also some smaller areas, like around Corpus Christi, that seem to have concentrations. And you can see a list of funders in the area by clicking on, for example, Dallas County and pulling up the list here.
That's really neat. Now, can you zoom in and show the street level, for example, or zoom into a city?
Yes, we can. So you could actually just, for example, this is a really cool aspect of this tool. You can keep going, you can keep going closer and closer, and actually the foundations will be plotted down all the way to their street level address.
Wow, that's really cool. So are there other ways that I can use this tool, for example, to provide more value to my membership?
Yeah, so I think if your members are interested in seeing where trends are going in philanthropy in a particular geography, they could click charts here. And so, what kinds of interest areas are they focused on?
Well, many of them are interested in education and health, but it would be interesting to see the top 5 subject areas for Texas.
Okay, so I'm going to select a couple of different subject areas from here, and each one that I add will actually be shown on the chart. So let's try agriculture, maybe arts and culture. You said education was of interest, health. Let's try human services. Maybe let's see if anyone's supporting philanthropy there. And then heck, sports and recreation, why not? So you can see that this will show basically how funding has fluctuated over time for foundations based in Texas. So it starts in 2006, and as you can see, there's this pretty apparent dip on both charts. So this is total dollar value of grants compared to total number of grants. And I'm guessing that since this is in 2009, it's probably from the recession. But if you scroll below that, you can actually see the total dollar of grants for all of these areas over time, and then you can kind of compare them to one another. So it looks like top areas of giving are arts and culture, education, health, human services, and even actually sports and recreation, which is interesting.
That's really cool.
So is this surprising to you?
Well, it makes sense when you think about it. Many of our members fund in these areas. Perhaps sports is a bit surprising, but it is Texas after all.
That's true.
Now, what about for my members who want to know which parts of Texas are getting the most funding so they can identify where the gaps are?
Sure. So why don't we go back to the map view and go to the area served view. So I'm going to switch this here, area served, and I'm actually going to X out some of this filtering criteria, which will take just 1 second. This is pretty fast, but every now and then it can lag a little bit. So it's loading, loading, loading. Okay, so again, this functions like a heat map. So we can see that there's areas of concentration funding around Dallas, around Houston or Harris County, around Austin or Travis County. And so actually, when I look at this, it's kind of interesting because where there's a concentration of where foundations are located, there's a concentration of where funding is going. So you might think that many funders based in Texas are probably giving to their local communities. And in addition to this, the white boxes actually show where there are gaps in funding. So in this county, no funding. In this county, no funding. So this can also actually function as a gap assessment analysis.
Oh, interesting. That'll be really great for my members to know. And what's that geoscale box over there?
Oh, good question. So you can show where grants are going statewide, countywide, and citywide for the United States.
That's great. That reminds me, we're doing a webinar on funding in Texas next month. Can I use this visual in our presentation?
Absolutely. We have a great feature that allows you to print this in a PDF. So a lot of organizations end up printing this and using it in their board presentations or, like you said, for a webinar. And you can do that here at the library. Or if you prefer to access this information on your own at home, you can purchase a subscription so you have full-time access to it at home.
That's great. Are there, if I want to test it out before purchasing, is there a way to do that?
Yeah, so we have a 24-hour free trial if you want to try it out at home. And so you can access that from maps.foundationcenter.org.
Okay, terrific. Well, I better run. I'm going to be late for a meeting that's starting soon, but this was incredibly helpful. Thank you so much.
Anytime. Take care. So another satisfied customer. Where was I? I think I was talking a little bit about Foundation Directory Online, which you all know pretty well because lots of grant seekers come to you to try to use that tool to find grant seeking. But what I'm finding is that lots of nonprofits and different, oh, hello.
Excuse me.
Hi.
Hi. I'm looking for some guidance on finding funding for my charter school in New Jersey. Can you help me, please?
Yes, of course. Hi, Charlie. So since I have Foundation Maps open, why don't we just start with this? So why don't I type in, let me clear the selection. The last person was interested in Texas. I'm going to type in, you said New Jersey?
Yep, New Jersey.
New Jersey. Okay, and you said charter schools?
That's right.
I'm not sure where charter schools would be under this menu. So I think I can maybe type it here and, oh, hey, look, it actually automatically pulled up charter schools. That's nifty. So I'm going to click charter schools. And so you can see that this shows concentrations of where recipients are located, and those could potentially be charter schools themselves. And so you can click on any of these bubbles to find out more about who those recipients are in any particular county. And if we go to the grants list, we can actually search and sort the information by dollar size of grant, so I can see, where maybe some smaller grants are going.
Oh, wow, that's great. Now, I'm seeing a mix of private and corporate. There's J.P. Morgan Foundation, Community Foundation of New Jersey, a mix of different funder types, which is great. We're actually looking to diversify our funding sources beyond just private foundations. Now, is there a way to filter by those?
Yes, there is. So I'm going to X out of this. I'm going to go over to the list here so we can see a list of foundations. And then under more filters is where you would find grant maker type. So let's try maybe community, maybe company sponsored, and maybe corporate giving program. And so here's a list of those foundations. But my suggestion to you is if you want to see if a funder is a good match, you might want to drill down and actually read a little bit more about what the grants they're making are for. And we can find that detailed information in Foundation Maps. So I'm going to just explore the Prudential Foundation. So it pulls up their profile, and then we can look at their grants. And let's just look at this really large grant that they made to Friends of Team Academy. Okay, so in 2003, they made a one-year grant for $1 million for the expansion plans to open 5 additional schools in Newark by 2020. So that's a good sense of where that foundation might be making funds. Let's try the Silicon Valley Community Foundation to see if it's any different. And let's see what this smaller grant is for. Okay, so this one is for Great Oaks during its first year of operation. So this one's more about helping maybe a school that's just been opened to continue operating.
That's exactly what I need. And I'm noticing, actually, it looks like a number of these foundations are based outside of New Jersey, but it looks like they're funding in New Jersey, which is great to see. So that's really interesting. Can I email this information to myself to look at later?
Yep, you sure can. So right here, PDF export means that you can download this into a PDF or also a CSV.
Terrific.
Is there anything else I can help you with today?
Well, identifying potential funders was my first step, but I actually also need help putting together a compelling proposal.
So as you may know, we have a list of online classes that Foundation Center offers, and that can help with that. You know, how to write a better proposal, how to seek new funding. There's a wide variety of classes. So with your charter school, are you looking to open up a new one or for continued funding for an existing one?
Both, actually. We're going through a strategic planning to open up a second school, but we're also looking for funding for the first school.
Okay, so let's actually use the map to see if we can plot out where charter schools are located in your area of interest. So I'm just going to X out these foundation filters here, and I'm going to show you how to use something called demographics. And this is a really kind of innovative and unique value add to this tool, because essentially you can see where demographics are by these various filters. So if you can't read it from where you're standing, since you're a little bit far away, we have white non-Hispanic, black, Hispanic, Asian American, Native American, people of color. So I'm just going to click on a couple of them. And sometimes this tends to lag a little bit, but it usually ends up popping up. So just be a little patient. So then you can also switch to per capita income, medium household income. And where are you planning on opening your second school?
In Newark.
In Newark. Okay, let me type in Newark right here in location, so we can drill down and look at more of the details. And again, let me pull up the U.S. demographics, and let's look at per capita income. So if we zoom in, we can see that the darker shades, as indicated by the legend, indicate where there's a higher concentration of high per capita income. And the lighter regions are where there is a higher concentration of a lower per capita income. So it appears, if we look right here, there are several gaps in terms of where charter schools could be located that have low income areas. Is this helpful to you at all?
Yeah, no, this is really interesting, but I'm actually interested in a very particular area. So right here by Springfield Avenue and McCarter Highway, that's sort of the area we've carved out and would want to know more about.
Okay, so we have this polygon tool that lets you select just specific areas on this map and pull demographic information for just that area. So you click the polygon tool, and you just basically click and drag it over the area you're interested in. So you said below Springfield and above McCarter Highway. And so I'm just going to close this shape and give it a second while it thinks. But just to give you a little more background information, this data is drawn from the U.S. Census, and it goes back and shows demographics information all the way to 1990. And you can see we have these trends. So you can see for the various different population demographics how it's changed since 1990. And we actually have the data projected to 2018. So we can see it for population types and also for income levels. So you might think about inserting this into your proposal, and that would make a strong case and provide good evidence for doing this in a particular area of Newark.
Oh, that's excellent. These are more ways than I would have thought that I could use this. So thank you so much. This is really helpful. Thanks for all your help.
Anytime. See ya.
All right. Thank you, everyone. So thanks for participating in our role play presentation. In addition to Foundation Maps, we also wanted to highlight a few other tools and resources that Foundation Center has to offer that are free to the public and that might be useful to your patrons. So we call these knowledge services, and you can find them and many others on the knowledge services area of the Foundation Center website. So we're just going to kind of demo a few of them for you and give you some more information.
Great. So this first one that I'm just going to explain really briefly is called Foundation Landscapes Education, and it was created to essentially capture all of the information about education that Foundation Center was already collecting in various different areas and just putting it together in one place for everyone to access. And this site is completely public, so anyone can access it anywhere. So it draws reports from Issue Lab, which you may or may not be familiar with, but that has about 17,000 reports pulled from the social sector, funded by foundations, sometimes produced by nonprofits. And so you can filter education by, where, so geography, so reports related to New Jersey or reports related to California. You can also search about where you're interested in, so topics like stem cell education or arts education or digital learning. And you can also look at reports by education level. So is this, elementary school, middle school, university level, et cetera. And then we also have foundation stats. So this shows top funders, top recipients. You can see trend lines here about different areas of foundation giving. And then we also pull from GrantCraft. And GrantCraft is a tool made essentially by funders for funders, but we find that a lot of grant seekers get a lot of value out of it, and it shows the practical wisdom of funders around different various issue areas or kind of strategic areas. And then we have stories from Philanthropy News Digest, so we can see there's some recent grants that were made by HSBC about launching a particular fund for education. So this is Foundation Landscapes Education.
So I'm going to show all of you a project that I worked on that's called Foundation Funding for U.S. Democracy. So like the name indicates, basically this is a tool that visualizes data, funding data for different kinds of areas of democracy in the U.S. Since 2011. And so this was created with a group of funders that work in different areas of democracy that really wanted to kind of get a better sense of where all the funding was going and just kind of help be more coordinated and strategic in their grant making. So they wanted to just have this kind of knowledge at their fingertips. So this is the landing page, and then as soon as you get in, you have kind of a little pop-up that gives you some basic information about how to get started. And you'll notice that this is on the Foundation Maps platform. So this is a custom version of Foundation Maps that we built for them, and that's publicly available through their grants to us to make this happen. So here we have a custom framework by which this data is organized. So they helped us kind of figure out, what the different categories should be called, what, was in and out, what they considered to be democracy funding versus something else. So we created 4 main categories. There's campaigns, elections, and voting, and then all the kind of subcategories below that. There's civic participation, government, and media. And the charts basically just give you a simple way to easily compare how much funding has gone to different areas, what's getting more funding or less funding, and what the distribution of that looks like. So again, that's from 2011 to the present day. And then we also have a map, again, very similar to the map in Foundation Maps, that plots democracy-related funding across the U.S. By either the location of the grantee or of the foundation. And we have the list view, which I think you're all probably very familiar with by now, as well as the Constellations feature, so that network mapping tool that we showed. So in this case, again, just showing this smaller universe of democracy funders for this view. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. That's what we call the democracy tool. So I'll turn it back over to Amanda.
So we're going to show you 2 more tools. And again, these are ways that we've customized data that we have for funders who are trying to scan the landscape around a particular more specific issue area. So,
and they've also proven very useful to grantees as well. So even though the primary audience may have started out as funders, we also find that grantees are using this and finding it really useful to just kind of make the connections, see where the funding is going, who they can prospect, and so on.
That's a great point. This website was launched just last month, and it's called Equal Footing. And it focuses on funding going to Rwanda, Burundi, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And then it also has a point of view in that how funding can improve the lives of the people in those countries by investing in women. So again, this landscape has a interactive map where you can search grants data, top funders, that kind of thing. It also has these key findings that are kind of sprinkled throughout that have been pulled from reports around funding in this area so that people can really quickly understand what it is like to fund in one of these countries or in a post-conflict or conflict country. Then you can also pull up profiles on top funders so you can get to know what their interests are a little bit better. There's also case studies that are written from the perspective of foundations on lessons they've learned or the successes or challenges of some of their investments. And then finally, we have also a bit of a taxonomy with this project. And so we looked at economic development for women and categories around which grants data, reports, and different work clustered around. So some of that has to do with land and property rights, some of that has to do with financial inclusion, et cetera. And so this, again, as Nina said, was built for funders, but actually as we've looked at the analytics, of the top 5 countries who are accessing this website, 2 are Burundi, or one is Burundi and the other is Rwanda. So 2 African countries where it's likely that no foundation exists. So it's likely lots of grant seekers accessing this.
And it's also one of our more beautiful portals, so we're really proud of it. So just another kind of Africa-related tool that we wanted to show you today is the Foundation Maps for Early Childhood Development in East Africa. So this was actually something that we created with funding from Bernard Van Leer Foundation. And they were interested in just kind of having a better sense of what the funding was in these areas. So they work in 2 countries in Eastern Africa, but they wanted to know how much funding was going to some of the other countries, who was giving there, and just kind of, again, be able to find partners for collaboration and just coordinate their funding better with others working in the area. So again, using the Foundation Maps as a platform, we created a custom version. And so this really focuses more on the map than anything else. The 2 options are the map and the list view for this data set. And working with Bernard Van Leer, they identified 16 countries kind of in Eastern and parts of Southern and Northern Africa that they were specifically interested in having more information on. And we created, again, a custom taxonomy for early childhood development. So it covers things like child and maternal health, early education, nutrition, water, sanitation, and hygiene as it relates to the health of the child. And basically what you're looking at here is the green bubbles represent foundation funding for ECD in a particular country, so in this case Ethiopia, and the yellow bubbles represent bilateral and multilateral aid that's going to these countries. So you'll notice that the yellow bubbles are a lot bigger than the green ones just because there's so much more aid versus foundation funding going there. But they really wanted to have this kind of additional data stream so that they could better understand the full picture of funding for this area. And then something else that I really like about this map is that we were able to include 3 country-level indicators. So this is helpful in kind of identifying where the gaps are, which countries have the most need for funding. And the indicators are GDP per capita, mortality rate for children under 5, and prevalence of undernourishment. So for example, you can pick prevalence of undernourishment and kind of overlay that with nutrition to see how much funding has gone for nutrition, and then maybe zoom into a particular country or just look at the map as a whole. There's a legend here at the bottom left, And so it tells you the darker the color, the darker the blue, the higher the undernourishment for that country. And then gray also means that there's no indicator data for a particular country. So the darker blue countries have a higher need, and you can see right away, this country isn't getting, so again, Ethiopia isn't getting foundation funding for nutrition, it's not getting bilateral, multilateral aid, but it's getting foundation funding. And then some are getting less, some are getting more, so it's just kind of a quick way to start this research in terms of where the gaps are for ECD and East Africa. So that was the reason we built this map, and we launched it a few months ago, and it's been getting a lot of usage.